Hello, everyone. This is Hernan Rodriguez, and this is my final presentation for the class CIT 260. So we're going to see a little bit of what we have been studying and preparing during this semester, and we're going to see a few topics. The first one is static class variables versus non-static instance variables. So starting with static methods and variables. So what makes a special static method and a variable? The special thing of a method that is static is that you call it directly from the class. And the special thing of a variable, a static variable, is that all the instances share the attribute. All the instances. So for example, here we see the class City of Aaron, and we have here an attribute that's the game, that is a static, and then two methods that are static as well, the get game and the set game. Here, later in the code, we use another method that is going to use these things. For example, in create new game, you see we use first we create an object, an instance of game, and then we call City of Aaron set the game. So here you can see the implementation of a method set the game that is a static method. As you can see, we call directly from the class City of Aaron dot set the game. So this is a really nice thing of the static methods. And a static variable, as we were talking right now, the special thing of this is that since it's static, if I create, for example, an object or an instance of City of Aaron, and I use the method get the game, I get one game. I get the current game. And if later on in another part of my code, I create another instance of City of Aaron and I use get the game again, it's going to be the same game since this attribute is static and is going to be shared by all the instances that I create. So that's a good thing, and that's why we use static for the game, because we always want to be handling only one game at a time. Okay, so for non-static instance and variables, this is more common in our game. We see this a lot. Here we can see this is a class called list item. Sorry, list item. And to use, for example, a non-static class, what you have to do is use the new keyword. Here in the example, right next to right here, we see that we use the new and list item. So here, what we're doing is we're creating a new instance of a list item. Then for methods that are non-static, for example, this one right here, set animals. This is a method that is a non-static. Why do I say this? For example, as you can see here, the game is not a class. This is a variable. This is an object. So methods that are non-static have to be called from an object, not like a static class method that you have to call it directly from the class. You have to call it directly from an object. That's the big difference. Okay, now we can pass to the lists. We have seen three types of lists: arrays, array lists, and enums. So these are the main differences of these lists. So an array is a fixed list. You have to specify how many items does the list have. Can contain primitive values or objects, must be of the same data type, and can be accessed by an index number. An array list is very similar. The big difference is that it's a dynamic list, so you don't have to specify how many elements the list is going to have. You can add or remove at runtime. So this is the big difference. And enum, I think it's the most different of all. The big difference is that so the elements here are constants, so they never change. So the elements that you put here will never change during the code or the program. And you don't use an index to access the elements. You use their name like a key value pair. So here we can see a few examples of the usage of these lists. So here in array list, we use this method that's create tool list. Here we used an array list to add tools to this list, so we can show later to the user that's playing the game. So we choose an array list because maybe in the future we want to create functionality to add more tools to this list or remove more tools to this list. So we needed something that was flexible and not fixed. That's why we used an array list. So for enums, for example, here in the team members, we have, these are the names of the people who created the game. So these values are never going to change. These are the people who created the game. The game is finished, so these values are not going to change. So that's why it was easier to use an enum directly. For arrays, sorry. Here is a fun example that I had to work in the game. In the class map, we have an attribute here that's called locations, and it's a two-dimensional array of locations. So later in the game, we can see we used the game control method class. We used a method called create map, where we initialized this array and we created a map of 5 and 5. You can see I noted down here that max row, max col are 5. So this creates basically a matrix of 5 columns and 5 rows. So it's like a square, a matrix that is basically a two-dimensional array. So this was very interesting. So we choose to use two arrays, in this case, because it was easier this way, because the amount of the map is always going to be 5 rows and 5 columns, but the method, the elements inside can change because they are variables. So here is an example of how to iterate through an array. This is the other reason why we choose to use arrays in this case, because since you can access the elements through an index number, it's easier to use. You can use a for loop and iterate through the whole map. So this is very useful. So here's a basic example how to iterate through an array, and this is how I iterate through the map. So since it's a two-dimensional array, for example, here is we have to use two for loops. Two loops to the first step is to get the map instance. So in this step we get the map, and then you can see, since it's a two-dimensional array, you can think it as first iterate through each row, and each row is going to have 5 columns. So in each round you have to iterate 5 times again. So here we use a for loop where we create first a variable that's set to 0. We're going to tell it go through while this is variable is less than 5, go again, keep iterating, and each time you finish a round, increase one. So here I start a for loop, and I iterate through the rows, and then here I iterate through the columns. I do the process again. And here we can see in this fourth step, we are using the variables that we created here. It's I and j. I is going to represent the rows, and j is going to represent the columns. So here we can access the numbers of the map. So very fun. Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about exceptions and how to use them. So in this class, we made a custom exception. For example, this one right here, called crop exception, and that has to inherit from the exception class. And we created a constructor of this exception that is going to take a parameter, a string. So thanks to this, what you can do here, for example, in our game, sell land, there's a method called sell land, and we have a validation. So if the user inputs a number that's less than 0, this is going to this is going to be an error. We don't want this, so we use the word throw and put new crop exception, and we make use of this custom class, and we pass the string specifying what is the error. This is very helpful because it helps developers to understand where the error is coming from. So jumping to the next topic, here we see character stream versus byte stream. So this is a small explanation about the difference. This is for reading and writing data to external files. So first there was the byte streams. So a byte stream reads and writes binary data, 1 byte at a time in a sequential order. Byte stream is used to read and write character data stored in ASCII format. So ASCII only supports Western-based languages like English and Spanish, etc. The problem is that Java now uses the Unicode as the default format for reading character data. And Unicode uses 2 bytes of memory. So the solution to this is to use character streams. A character stream reads both ASCII format and Unicode format. So this fixes this problem. And Unicode, as another note, supports all languages, not just Western languages. So this is why we always want to use character code. Java today uses by default Unicode, so we should use character streams. How to write character data into an external file. Here is a small example of how we did this point. So there's basically 3 steps that we have to do. First, to print something into an external file, we create a file stream like this right here. We use the new keyword, we use the print writer class, and we pass it in a file path where the document is going to be. Then we write the data into the to the string. Here I'm using the print line, and then and last but not least, we have to close the stream using the method close. So these are the 3 steps. It's very simple, and it was also fun to do. And so this was the presentation. I hope everything's covered and everything was explained correctly. So thank you for watching.